We are very lucky to have a fan favorite of the ceramics world. Known here in Saskatchewan, across Canada and internationally, this ceramic artist is not afraid to jump in, try something new, speak her mind, and open space for new artists and new conversations in craft. Her two distinct bodies of work, one figurative-based sculpture, the other functional pottery, both thematically and conceptually address contemporary politics, craft production, and its relationship to capitalist society. A maker, writer, curator, mover, and shaker. She received the 2017 Artist of the Year Award from Ceramics Monthly, established the Musing About Mud online resource 2007, and co-founded the online collective Make and Do Ceramics in 2015. It is a pleasure to welcome to the stage Carole Epp.
It's just been an honor, really, to sit at these tables and hear from you guys. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about this morning is about a lot of the struggles that I'm having with this project, which our group Make and Do is having with this project. And so this is sort of going to be continuing on the conversations the last couple days about some of the stuff that we need to work on and some of the ways that we can support each other. So I'm not going to be talking to my slides at all. What you're seeing up here is just going to be a lot of eye candy. I'm talking about the Make and Do Canadian Clay Directory. So basically, this, if you want to zone out, it's pre-lunch. You just look at a bunch of good, amazing art from all across Canada, okay? So let's start with what is Make and Do. Make and Do is a collective of artists who are building an online community with the aim of working to gain exposure for Canadian ceramic artists and organizations within national and international audiences. In particular, today, we'll just focus on this directory. But first, I want to talk about the backstory. I'm glad you like origin stories. We're going to hear mine. Because you need to understand, too, why it is that a group of artists have decided to take time out of their already overtaxed days to do a bunch of volunteer work for the greater good. And yes, I'm saying volunteer work, and I need that to be resonated in this room. I'm going to come back to that in particular when I talk about things about shortcomings and projects and sustainability, but I think it's important to be as transparent as possible about how this project is being created and managed. Virtually zero budget and a lot of volunteer hours. So, as I was sort of said, if you know anything about me, you'll know I'm fairly opinionated and I tend to speak my mind, especially if I can do it from home while hiding behind the protective screen of technology to do it. So a few years ago, I made this comment on a Facebook post, and it kind of sent me down the path that is what is Make and Do today. So Ceramics Monthly is an American magazine that's read internationally and quite well respected. This is the journal that I used to read when I was a young student, an undergrad at the uni, and I'd go to the library and read it because I was too broke to afford a subscription. This was the stuff of dreams, the place that showcased what was happening in contemporary clay. These were my idols, the artists I researched, and who I wanted to be when I grew up. The centerfolds were glossy glazes and highly crafted clay surfaces. So fast forward from about 1997 to say about 5 years ago, one day on their Facebook page, Ceramics Monthly asked, "Who are artists that we should know about? Tell us who we should write about." To which I boldly replied, "You need more Canadian content." You see, I'm really good at shouting out general ideas, not much about specifics. Being opinionated is super fun without the expectations of a follow-through, right? So I got a reply in an email from the editor of the magazine, nonetheless, that said, "Great, like who?" So long story short, I spent the next few weeks polling other artists and organizations, scouring the listings on Craft Council websites and the like, in order to put together a comprehensive list that I could send back to this editor. You see, I'd been working in the clay community for quite a while at this point, but I knew my way around it, but I was also under no illusion that I, by myself, had an adequate grasp of contemporary clay players across the country. I compiled, to the best of my abilities, through the help of others, a document rich with websites and email addresses, and sent this off to the editor. Shortly thereafter, I began to get requests from galleries and other artists and academics for a copy of the list. This felt great. There was a thirst for Canadian content out there, and perhaps also a void that could be filled. But so how do you take an idea, which you hope is a good one, and make it happen? So I began plotting and scheming with the great and brilliant mind that is ceramic artist Marina Patterson. How could this list that I've been working on, which honestly, regardless of its length, was going to always be a work in progress and in need of constant update, but how could we make this publicly available? How could we crowdsource content and get the community involved in building the list so that it became an even more inclusive and democratic process? The idea of the Canadian Clay Directory was born, but I knew it was going to need many hands to make light work, and in particular, we needed a huge marketing push to get the word out there. So Make and Do Collective was created. At the beginning, it was a group of 15 artists from across Canada, each with their own unique professional experiences that they could bring into the conversation. So website was built, but then we needed to make some noise about it. We took to social media and made use of followings that each of us had already established to individually draw attention to the project. We began to push the hashtag Canadian Ceramics, which at the time, a few years ago, had only about a dozen uses, which is now a visual directory in its own right of over 81,000 images on Instagram. Small acts growing into big things. Many hands making light work. Suddenly the community was self-identifying and raising their hands for visibility, and we participated in that exponential growth. Our own Instagram account became a platform to repost and raise the voices of these incredible makers. We're currently sitting at about 34,500 followers. This makes me feel like there's proof that there was an audience wanting to see this content and a community that was really eager to participate. But who is this audience of 34,000 followers? We can get a false sense of security about success through social media. So what do some of the numbers look like? Well, our analytics say that the top 5 countries that follow us are the US, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Turkey. The age demographic of our followers are primarily 25 to 34, with the 34 to 44 a close second, and 45 to 54 in third. The 18 to 24 crowd like us more than the 65 plus crowd, and women are 81% of our followers. Growing an Instagram account or hashtag is great, but you can't really search within that hashtag, and you can't pull it into categories and sort it. So in some ways, a lot of that information in the hashtag was getting lost in that growing number. So what was most current was getting the immediate attention, and then people were stuck scrolling really far back to get anything that was getting dated. And so this is not an effective way to monitor, engage with, or build community towards larger purposes. The Canadian Clay Directory, on the other hand, aims to be a more static resource. So it's similar but different to the Craft Council membership directories that we see across Canada. So we can search province by province. You have an upcoming trip to Halifax, you can go to the directory, see which artists live in that area, and someday soon, fingers crossed, the directory will also tell you all the local galleries, the shops, or any craft organizations within each of those provinces as well. Artists can get to know other artists in their region and meet up in person, find ways to work collaboratively, share resources, and ideally lead to professional mentorship opportunities. But the directory is still a massive work in progress. Yeah, I think the other day it was 2 years that the directory itself has been up, but we still have miles and miles to go. So I want to get honest and perhaps a bit ugly about the truth behind what it takes to build a resource like this online. The directory is currently in its second design phase. The first was an absolute nightmare. We were having to upload everything that was submitted to us by email onto the website, and then we were reformatting the website pages all the time. We use Wix as a website platform, and at that time there was no database option. I was talking back and forth with their support team. But then in the past little while, suddenly they did. They've grown the technology, and so now they have this database system as well. You have to understand, though, too, this is a group of ceramic artists. None of us are tech people, okay? So this is us learning on the fly about website construction. And I really suggest to a lot of people, Wix has been really incredible for us. I wouldn't swear by the platform. Every platform's got its faults too, but they've been really, really incredible for us building this. So we did look into hiring out the task of building this massive database. Our lowest bid was about the $5,000 mark, and we're a collective that did online sales every few months just to cover the basic web hosting costs of a few $100s. This wasn't an option. Sure, there's grants out there, but then again, finding the time to research and write for those grants seemed really daunting and impossible. We weren't an official organization. Partnering with an existing organization in order to access funds would have been great, but it also could limit our trajectory and our personal vision for the project. And then I also had people telling about these unicorns of rich people that just love donating to projects like this, but I'd never seem to be in the same room with these kinds of people, so go figure. Time passed, so Wix as a company progressed. So now we can build these databases into the website. I undertook the project of figuring out exactly how to make this work. So we've got an online form on the website now that artists fill out and upload their images directly onto, which then automatically through, I don't have to go in, none of our members have to go in, it just automatically creates their web page within our directory. So it's this beautiful automated system. It literally takes 5 to 10 minutes for the artist to get on the directory, so there's no excuse why even people in this room, Clint, are not on the Canadian Clay Directory. You knew that was coming. So it was this huge nightmare to build, but it works like a dream right now. But this was a month of my life that was dedicated out of the studio to building this element of our website. So you can go to makeanddo.ca/Canadian Clay Directory and go and check that out. You'll see postings like this. This is basically what you're going to find there. So the vision is about inclusivity, and this is really, really important to me because over the years as an artist, I've learned and experienced the boundaries and barriers and gatekeepers that exist in our profession and how they impact the trajectory of our careers, both positively and negatively. Personally, okay, this is like the glue thing you said earlier. I'm going to own up some. I don't have a membership with the Craft Council organization across Canada, and that's like hard to say in this room, but it's true, okay? And I'll try and explain why. These things are barriers, okay? This year alone, and you heard in the intro that Ceramics Monthly actually gave me this amazing award a couple years ago. This year I had to make the hard decision that I had to cancel my subscription to Ceramics Monthly, even though they've supported my career so much, because budget-wise, I can't afford it. It's not that I don't believe wholeheartedly in these organizations, their visions, missions, and accomplishments for artists. It's just that there's financial realities that many artists face, and to cut them off from these memberships and their subsequent related opportunities doesn't seem fair. I don't want Make and Do to be another one of those organizations. I wanted everyone from the student level to professional with all the accolades to be part of the directory. Why? Because the directory is about recording this time in history, about giving a space to make visible all members of our community, each of which contribute in their own unique ways. I wanted to create a resource that would exist decades later and still provide relevant information for research. I want us to use the potential of the web to give voice to our community so that in the future, when we say for example, somebody from our community passes, there's this resource that exists that we can go and we can get information about their life and contributions. Many artists get reduced to one-liners, sadly, particularly women artists throughout history. So how can we create a resource that levels the playing field for everyone? So right now, the directory has a gallery page for each artist with contact info and website links, but ideally, the dream is to have more expanded content like biographies, perhaps a shop platform, and much more. So while we're talking about inclusivity, let's really consider what actions it takes to get those people on our peripheries that we say we want at the table truly here, present at the table. If we think about what motivates most humans, it's the desire to feel included, to be part of something and to not be rejected. That's why social media works so beautifully. We can always find our co-conspirators, our teammates, our colleagues, wherever in the world they are. But we want to feel invited, and from my experience, I've found that sometimes even when we think we're open and inviting as organizations, we can still project levels of elitism and judgment that we don't necessarily intend. Early on in the launch of the Canadian Clay Directory, there was a lot of feedback that the directory should be juried, either by the collective or by a group of peers. I mean, heaven forbid everyone in their Etsy shop sign up and be a part of it. And side note, I totally have an Etsy shop, so I'm one of those people. But we didn't want to start classifying anybody. This was literally just Canadian clay. However you wanted to define it, however you wanted to define your involvement with it, that was relevant to this project. So defining parameters of who is worthy not only cuts out emerging artists or hobbyists, but also a huge population of the artists that honestly struggle with feelings of self-worth. In 14 years, I've been running this curated blog, Ceramic Art Musing About Mud, and I still literally have to pull teeth to get people to send me content. And these are people at all stages of their careers. Artists suck at self-promotion. They don't think that they're worthy, and so when you put up any barrier in terms of something being juried, they recoil and they don't want to bother. So the minute you mention jury, you lose that part of your periphery population that you so desperately want to include. This sort of relates to one of the stories you were talking about. I had this conversation a long time ago with a friend, and I mentioned something about a show at the Mendel Art Gallery and suggested they go see it, and they told me, they were like, but I don't go to the gallery. And I said, why not? And they said, it's for artists, isn't it? And I kind of I laugh at that, but then I also think that's actually what a large percent of our population, that's how they see these spaces, how they see the craft councils, and how they see arts organizations. And so how do we break down those barriers too? So I've kept that conversation in mind often when I think about breaking down barriers, inclusivity for the directory. There's a lot of work we have to do beyond just building the projects and presenting them for people to show up. We have to find the means to invite them in and show them the seat we've been reserving for them at the table. And then once we get them at the table, we need to ask them to speak up, and we need to shut up, and we need to start listening. This is something that Make and Do is struggling with. We need to find new means of reaching out beyond our networks and to reach those that don't know we even exist yet, okay? So time and money and time. Right now, we as Make and Do don't have any money, and we lack in time. I feel a lot of guilt relying on the volunteerism of the collective. Every email request for help starts with apologies all the time. Structuring project timelines and monitoring delivery and accountability is quite different when nobody is getting paid. So how can we grow projects like the Canadian Clay Directory to be more sustainable? I think we for one need to learn how to ask for help. I think we as artists, as collaborators and organizations need to show up and offer the help that we have to contribute and truly believe that no small act isn't without the potential for huge impact. So make and do through our social media channels, we try and promote things like this conference and things like different things that are exhibitions and stuff that are happening. And so it's sort of like in turn, we would like that same favor passed back to us. Some of the things I encourage folks to help us with are as simple as sharing those social media posts, but encouraging artists you know to add themselves to the Canadian Clay Directory. If every craft organization in Canada promoted the directory and encouraged their council members to add themselves, our directory would more than quadruple in content. If every artist on the directory told their own audiences, their community, and their colleagues and customers, then the use of the directory as a resource would skyrocket. If each academic, as part of their professional practice course, got their students to add themselves, we'd ensure that the next generation of makers who were already visible before they even leave the classroom. So for me, one of the main questions in regards to sustainability lies in how the project actually addresses a need for a community as well. We got into this project with a sense of how it could connect community, foster relationships, and would transform into tangible opportunities. But how do we actually judge if this is happening? And this has been a lot of the conversations that we've had around these tables in the last couple days. So it's been good to see how other people are dealing with this. So is growth and good feedback enough? I've always wanted the directory to be flexible enough to adapt to changing digital platforms and community needs. But how do we best assess that? And those are the kinds of things, too, that having different organizations helping by sharing some of the things that they're discovering within their own organizations with other organizations and groups allows us to all build on and grow from the problems or mistakes that we make. But our question was always, too, like, are we truly creating something that's unique? Or are we simply repeating on some level something else that already exists? How can we, as Make and Do, maintain a clear vision and mandate? I think as artists and organizers, we often feel like our role or place in community is constantly at risk of being made obsolete or irrelevant. And as a result, we take on too much. We water down our content production and become lost in a sea of trying new things in the hopes that something will work. Don't get me wrong, I don't suggest complacency. I encourage progress and adapting, but perhaps sometimes we spiral too far from our core goals trying to be everything to everyone. It's hard, especially when you put a lot of hard work and valuable time into projects and sometimes feel like the ball is never quite rolling independently. Letting go of certain aspects of what we do project-wise will allow us to focus on what we excel at. Sadly, funding models also want the fresh and new and constantly evolving. I can't end before acknowledging that I'm really blessed to work with an amazing group of makers that have helped grow Make and Do over the years into what it is today. Mariko Patterson, Leslie McKinley, Marnie McDiarmid, Katie Dryber, April Gates, Russell Hackney, Robin DuPont, Crystal Speck, Cathy Terapaki, Heather Brondall, Calica Bowlby, Sarah Pike, Shane Weaver, and of course, Jenna Stanton. The Make and Do members of the past and present have all contributed in their own ways to our collective success, but the reality of art and life balance and the burnout of volunteerism means our collective is in flux. We have sadly said goodbye to more than half of our collective members while wishing them well in their next creative projects. But even the sustainability of a collective group is a question that I raise and wonder about all the time. This is the stuff that keeps me up at night. I wonder how a project like the Canadian Clay Directory can live beyond its founding members, how we can pass on the reins to the resource when our time as contributors and project managers is at an end. How can we build models of digital resources that are truly adaptable to technology changes and updates as well as shifts in community needs? Do projects like this need to be under the umbrella of larger, more stable organizations? And how can we build partnerships with craft-based organizations that would allow us to grow, as well as offer all the needed resources, financial protection, grant writing, and marketing support? So you see, I don't have a lot of answers. I have a lot of questions, and a lot of the projects that were even presented here, I mean, they come at it in a very different way. Coming at Make and Do, I'm one of those people where it's like, there's an idea, let's find a way to make it happen. And that's not necessarily the smartest way of doing things all the time. Being more structured, being more thoughtful and considerate about how to actually make these things work rather than just running on the passion is definitely something that I wish I was more of that type of a brain, but I'm not that type of a brain. So part of even presenting today here too is to get feedback on this is what we've got, this is where we've gotten to within this time frame, and we would love to hear more feedback about what it could be, what people think of it, and how we might adapt it to better serve community needs.